Hello, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, and I'm Gary Harper, State Rep. And our guest, John Heichel, is coming late, my co-host. And our guest today is former Senator Robert Clegg, Sir Robert of Clegg, from the big city of Hudson.
From the big city of Hudson.
From the big
Actually,
city.
we're still a town.
You're still a town?
Still a town.
Yeah, in name only. So, anyway, Bob was asking me before the show where my co-host was, and I told him the new one was John Heichel. And the reason, in case you haven't watched the show lately, is Matt Connerton just started a show, a radio show from 4 to 6 down the hall.
Oh,
And
good
if somebody
for him.
has a radio show, the rules of the station are you can't also have a TV show. So he had to pick between hanging out with me for an hour or getting a 2-hour show
By
Monday
himself.
through Friday by himself. So he'd rather hang out by himself than with me.
It doesn't seem right.
It seems pretty logical to me, but anyway, so John Heichel agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Heichel agreed to
Hang with you, too.
hang with me as often.
Do you think he got a 1-hour show?
He had a 15-minute show? Hey, so I don't know if they can zoom in. I gotta show people my T-shirt. Paul, are you busy? You gotta zoom in on. Oh man, this one right here. I'll turn right here. This is that same T-shirt you've seen a lot of people with, except the last skull is a libertarian, as a liberal, same thing. And I have no idea. I got it in the mail from Amazon yesterday, and there's no note. I have no idea who sent it to me, and I find it very offensive, because it presumes liberals to be apes. And but I also didn't want to look like an ingrate not wearing it. And I certainly want to encourage people to send me free stuff if they want to.
Actually, I think that's a Neanderthal skull. No? It's an ape skull?
I
You
checked it.
Oh.
Yeah, so I don't want to discourage people from sending me free stuff, because that would be stupid.
So if somebody sends you a tutu, will you wear it on the...
Huh. I'll have to think about that. No, I have to say no, because I know you would be the one who sent it to me anonymously. I'm just saying.
If I could see it on you on the show,
Definitely
it'd
be worth it.
Yep.
Regardless, I don't even know how much those cost.
Doesn't matter.
It's been about a zillion years since my daughter was
I'll
in
bet I could get
ballet.
enough money in collections just to...
Oh, I bet you could. Yes, you're very effective.
Hmm.
Effective is a good word.
Yep.
Okay, so you wanted to come on. I was going to talk about the budget, where that stands in the Senate.
Yep.
Or you wanted to talk about Senate Bill 9, which I've been getting a lot of emails about.
Well, why don't you start with Senate Bill 9, then we'll go to the budget.
Okay. So Senate Bill 9, for people who aren't glued to politics, is a bill to protect people. It goes into the statute under
The Rape Shield Law.
the Rape Shield Law.
Yep.
The Rape Shield Law was probably dated back to the 80s or 90s because there were...
Actually, it goes into the 70s. We were the first state in the nation to actually put something up like that.
Okay. So in the 70s in New Hampshire, they had the Rape Shield Law, and in effect what it was that if prior to that, if a woman was attacked or raped, it would go to court, and the defense would say, well, she was wearing a short skirt. Or the defense would say, well, she had sex with X number of other guys, so why not me? And for some reason, that worked. So we had to write into the law. Top of the evening to you, John.
How are you?
We're talking about Senate Bill 9.
Good.
And so we had to write into the law that no, just because a woman has consented to sexual activity prior to that event does not mean she, by definition, consented.
Right.
And that's what the Rape Shield Law. So Senate Bill 9 has two parts. And I'm just drawing a blank. The first part was what?
Well, Senate Bill 9 actually was because of the murder of Lizzie.
Right, what was the first part of it? Oh, okay, now I get it. So Senate Bill 9 came in two parts. There was, what was the woman's name?
Lizzie.
Lizzie.
Right.
So Lizzie was engaged in some activity with a guy, and the guy, she ended up dying, and they tried to, I think, throw the body in the ocean.
Actually,
or
she
something?
wasn't involved with them. She had gone there she was brand new in the area. She had gone there because the other guy's girlfriend asked her to go. She didn't have any friends, so she went there, and I don't know what happened in the middle, but I do know the final was that the guy ended up strangling her to death, and once she was dead, he stripped her body nude and then had sex with her with a dead body. Then they threw her body in the ocean. She's
Okay.
never been recovered.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah, no, they've never found her.
That's good they got a conviction then. Because without,
I think the guy's girlfriend told the
Ratted
whole
him out.
story.
okay. So, anyway, so because of that case, what happened was that the guy was convicted in the lower court. In the lower court's proceedings, there's always or can be what's called exculpatory evidence, which is any evidence that the prosecution has that could provide defense or a argument for the defense has to be supplied to the defense.
Correct.
We deal with that a lot in judiciary and other issues. So that's exculpatory evidence that helps the defense. There was some of that evidence that this woman had engaged in some unusual things, and the judge found that it was not pertinent to the case and didn't allow it.
Right.
And the lower judge, under the statute, can protect that information so it isn't disseminated to the general
They seal
public.
the record.
Okay, it's a sealed record. The problem was when it went to the Supreme Court, because it was part of the arguments in the defense, it was not under statute necessarily sealed, and that information became public, which,
It never actually became public, but the fight was over whether or not for it to be public, and they actually stopped it from being opened 100%. But the Supreme Court said that the legislature needs to be clear that when a record is sealed at the Superior Court level,
right,
that on appeal, that information still remains sealed. Now, in order to get something sealed, a judge has to look at it and say it's not pertinent.
right,
Those rules, if they pass Senate Bill 9, would follow when they got to the Supreme
Right.
Court. The Supreme Court would look at the sealed record and say, there's nothing in here that would change our mind, so if you've got something else you want us to look at, okay.
okay.
And that's the most important part. And,
But
and
let me finish.
Okay.
So that's the first part of Senate Bill 9, was to protect that information so you don't incriminate a victim up at the Supreme Court level when it's evidence that is irrelevant to the case. So in other words, John is a victim of abuse, and it goes to the Supreme Court, so all that information about him and his relationships on Facebook or wherever else, you know about those, right? So
No.
those aren't open to the general public, so it's not impugning his character.
Right.
So that's the first half of Senate Bill 9, and the House already passed that part of the bill a couple of months ago. This same exact bill came to our committee a few months ago, a couple months ago, and we passed that first part because that seemed completely credible. The second half of that bill basically says that any communications, whether it's actually not quite clear in the bill, but any communications that person had prior to the event with anybody other than the perpetrator is not admissible as evidence, which
Correct.
I find very disturbing. And I'll go ahead.
okay, well, let me just give you a couple
SB 9
things.
is strictly for appeal, correct?
No.
Well, in a sense, but
It falls
but
under the rape shield law. It's
Right.
in the statute.
the rest of it, as you said, is you have to understand that in Lizzie's case, she was a missing person. So the evidence that they ended up sealing was evidence when you're a missing person, the police go out and their job is to talk to everybody and anybody who might have seen you or known you or spoken to you
Right.
and ask questions. And in those questions, they may ask things that might lead them to where you might have been. Well, it was information in those where they learned about who she was and other things that wasn't pertinent, so they wanted it to be sealed. So the bill that you have now, the first half that the House has already passed and the Senate has agreed because they passed it back to you, is the part that says what is and what isn't my sex life. So if the three of us were downstairs having a beer and we talked about something, that shouldn't become part of a court case against me afterwards.
Right.
And that's what that bill does. It says is my discussions with you or our talk or my laughing at one of your jokes doesn't make me.
He does do that, by the way, occasionally.
He laughs at your jokes?
Yeah,
No
yeah.
way.
No, I think I get videos of it.
Sometimes
Wow.
they're pretty funny.
Really?
But what it says is that, so basically, and it goes two ways, and we have to be careful, because if we're not careful, then somebody can decide to falsely accuse somebody of something, and then go out and find 10 people who don't like you that'll come in and say, oh yeah, I heard him say blah, blah, blah. So the idea is, when it comes to, in this case, rape, basically, you have to prove your case. You can't go out and grab 5 people to say something bad about you, and you can't get 5 people to say something bad about me unless it's pertinent. So if I said to you, I wanted to have sex with that person, and then I got raped, well then, that's different. But if we're just talking about somebody and being guys or girls being girls, and girls are much worse than guys, believe me.
I don't believe you.
Oh, they are.
Do you believe him?
Yes, I believe everything Bob says.
Wow.
It's because I'm the oldest one here,
Right.
which makes me wiser.
He has seniority.
Yes, he does have seniority.
Yes.
So basically, what we're saying is, we need, when a crime's committed, we need to stick to the facts of the crime and not start digging 10 years, 30 years, 40, it's just, when I was a kid, I used to drink a lot. But if a cop stopped me today and said, I think you're drunk, and find me, somebody shouldn't be able to go back to when I was a problem
Right.
and say, oh yeah, he used to do that all the time, so he must have been doing it now. And that's basically what the Senate Bill 9 says. It says, let's be clean, and the Superior Court can still seal the records with all that information, and when it gets up to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has asked the legislature, be specific. So when they come up here, if we don't want them to use information that was sealed, or don't want them to use information that's really not pertinent to that exact case, then it should be allowed to be sealed again
Okay.
and remain sealed. And that's all Senate Bill 9 does. And all Senate Bill 9 says is, if a judge says, look, this has no bearing on the case, then it should be done.
Yeah, but if you, go ahead.
Well, I don't know why. I thought I read that Senate Bill 9 had something to do with consensual sex cases. If there was consensual sex,
No.
then what
Consensual,
was I reading? I was reading about Senate Bill 9, and that was
it depends on who's writing about it, but if you read the bill itself, if you can prove that it was consensual, it is. But the case that it's based on is the case where they actually took the girl in, pretending to be a friend, killed her, and then, and I hope her parents aren't watching, but
But
But this is what I read, and this is the only reason I read this earlier. An act relative to the admissibility of prior consensual sexual activity in sexual assault cases.
right, prior consensual sex is something that just because you had sex with,
Consensual.
right, okay, 18 years, or actually,
I see.
I've been with my wife 46 years ago, I had consensual sex with somebody. Doesn't mean I can
Who?
have sex with them
who-
again.
Wait, who?
I'm not telling
Right.
you.
It doesn't mean
But that's the whole thing, because really that's what they do. So if you have a girl,
and you can't set up a scenario of this is him all these years.
right,
You have-
in 4 years of college, she had sex with 5
Right.
different guys, and they all happened to be part of my fraternity. So of course it
Right.
was my turn. Shouldn't be even stated. Never mind. And for anybody who's watching, I don't believe that but, you know, those are some of the things that people
There's a
say.
statute of limitations on evidence also?
No,
No.
no, that's the
Well,
problem.
see,
Right.
okay, now,
Right, but that's what this bill's trying to fix.
this
Right.
is why I voted against it in committee. And if people are wondering my credentials, if you look under the rape shield law, the last thing that was entered into it was mine. And that was a bill, because I witnessed that in the court systems in Manchester, with somebody who's pretty close to me. What the prosecutors would do would be to subpoena the parents of the victim of a child, an underage child. They would
Yeah.
subpoena them so that they weren't allowed in the courtroom while the child was testifying.
Right,
It was a deliberate way to
I remember that. Intimidate the
intimidate the
child.
child in the courtroom.
Right,
And then if you look in the rape shield law, that last part where it basically prevents them from doing that
yeah,
was something I introduced.
Yeah.
I think I had to do it a couple times, but we got it through. So it's not like I'm unsympathetic,
no, I know
But-
you are.
but the way I see it is, and I asked about this in committee, and they said, and I'll tell you what my argument was. We're all familiar with, I haven't read it, I don't have any intention to read it or go see the movie, of the scenario of 50 Shades of Grey. Okay? Where adults can engage in some risky
Right,
behavior
right.
for entertainment purposes.
Mhm.
And if people were, if somebody was, let's call it two men were involved in this, just to keep, because it's always women that are, and I think we look at these things too emotionally. So two men are involved in risky behavior, and they hook up over one of these apps,
Right,
okay?
right.
And I'm sure there's an app for people who are into the more risky.
There's an app for everything,
There's
so
an app,
I'll agree with
there's
you.
an app for that, okay? So they hook up over this app, and one of the guys gets in there and says, "Holy mackerel! This guy's got lots of money." Okay, so they get done whatever they're doing, and he goes down to the police station and says, "Oh man, I went over to this guy's house for a drink, and I don't know what was in the drink, but I've got bruises on my wrist, and I've got this, and I got that, and I'm so upset." Okay, so now you have a court case, the way that you've laid out, where that person, the rich guy, has to prove that it was all consensual. Now, the problem is, if you allowed the exculpatory evidence in of him communicating with 10 other people in the last year, engaging in exactly the same type of behavior, it would prove that it's very likely, or would add a reasonable amount of doubt.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
It absolutely
No,
does.
because just because both those guys were on that app and both those guys participated in that, doesn't mean when one guy went to the other guy's house, that other guy didn't overpower him and do something to him that he didn't want. What would have been okay was if they met on the app, and this wouldn't be excluded, if they met on the app and they discussed meeting together on the app, that would still be usable in court because
Right,
it was
because
two
it's
things
between
between
those
them.
two.
But just because you've done something with somebody else doesn't mean you willingly did it with the next guy.
No, but it should be allowed as exculpatory evidence because it proves a pattern.
It doesn't prove anything. It proves that the other guy was smart enough to trick you into going to his house, and he knew that if he could use that information, no matter what he did to you, you could never prove that you said no.
Right.
And that's
both
not
ways.
fair.
Well, it's
Right,
both ways.
right. But the thing of it
So
is,
how does the rich guy, when he just did stuff that he was going to do anyway, and with the guy was perfectly okay with it, how does he defend himself? Can he?
from what I understand, on a lot of those things where that kind of behavior happens, people actually sign agreements.
Or whatever.
Okay? But if you take somebody home and they've had too much to drink, whether it's a guy or a girl, and I'll stay with the two guys. The guy that was drunk and you were his ride home, and he decides he's going to do something to you anyways, just because you're gay and just because you've had multiple partners doesn't mean that you wanted to have sex with that guy.
Right.
And so what you've done with other people should have no bearing.
Yeah.
Now, two people, well, you know what though?
Because
Unless you've been convicted.
No, the thing is, no, because that's not admissible either. The thing is, in my mind, the ultimate goal, no, it is not. The ultimate goal is justice.
Correct.
And so I think that the judge should be in possession with of the information and decide whether it's exculpatory or not and
Well,
allow
the-
it in.
The bill doesn't stop that.
It doesn't, exactly, but it should be in the statute that the judge should not have to override a statute to do what is just.
But
It should
he
be in
doesn't.
the statute a disclaimer that says, except if or something. It's the way it's written.
Is this
really
bill
bothers-
leaving everything up to interpretation?
Yes.
And if,
I don't think so. Yes, a judge's interpretation. So when a judge looks at evidence, he decides and determines whether or not it should be allowed in the case or not allowed in the case. And if he decides it's not, that evidence gets sealed. The problem that we're having is that sealed evidence suddenly becomes open upstairs. Now, the
The
reason
open
why...
part, well, let's dissect this. The open part, we both agree. That shouldn't be open until it's used in evidence.
But until you define what can be sealed, up at it's the Supreme Court that said you have to tell us what you want sealed. So if you don't tell them that can be sealed, then when it gets up there, they're going to say, yeah, they said that we couldn't unseal the record, but they didn't say what could be in the sealed record. So since they didn't tell us, we're going to allow this to come out. Now understand, the only reason a defense attorney, in my opinion, would even try to unseal that record is to try to get the parents and the family to back off so his client could get a better deal. Because let's face it, they already had a confession and stuff from his girlfriend.
Right.
They already knew what he did. So opening up that, what difference does it make? He still murdered her.
Right,
And he still did what he did when she was dead.
right.
So what difference would it make what was in the thing? Because you know what? She had never gone anywhere else and said to somebody, kill me, and then when I'm dead, have sex with me. So what the Supreme Court has said is, tell us what we can't release if a record's sealed at the Superior Court level.
Yeah, but it's also saying what is or isn't admissible in court.
No, that's not what it's saying. It's saying that that's what can be sealed.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And I think,
You wanna step
personally...
outside? Huh?
Yeah, you want to step outside? I got a hand grenade, you know.
You probably do.
So,
Do you know-
anyways, that vote's tomorrow. We'll see what happens.
Do you know that the federal aid, there's actually federal, I don't know who gets this job. This is the greatest job. I gotta talk to Trump. There is a federal agent. If you can get a permit to have a can grenade, but if you ignite it or light it off, there's a federal agent that has to come and make sure that it's disposed of correctly. What a cotton-picking awesome job that is.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not so great because we found some and we were smart enough to turn them in. And when they released them, the lag time between pulling the pin and the explosion was less than 2 seconds.
Ouch! I hate
So
when that
it's a good
happens.
thing somebody didn't decide,
Wow.
hey, let's play with these and see what happens.
Well, that's why you use them. You use those for tripwires.
Yeah.
Right.
That's probably what they were.
Oh, another gun thing.
Don't be pointing your gun finger at me.
Oh, that's no. I shoot left.
I'm going to need to go to my.
This is the
I'm
way I
gonna
use
need
left
to go to my safe
I
place.
shoot left safe place. Oh, I can't imagine what that looks like. Okay, I don't want to. Okay, erase that. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Yep.
Has a habit of writing laws, basically, which is really annoying. I don't know, 2002 or 3, Sig Sauer came out with an arm brace for pistols, but
Right.
like an AR-15 type pistol.
Right.
A pistol, AR-15 is typically a rifle, but if you have a short barrel and no stock on it, it's called a pistol. You can sell it as a pistol. So Sig Sauer came out with a brace so that you can clamp that onto your arm, so you can to help you steady the weapon to shoot it as a pistol,
Sort of makes you a robot.
which is pretty cool.
Right.
So that's really cool stuff. So they went to, I don't know how this goes, but they went to the BATF, or the BATF saw it, and made a decision that it's a supportive brace and is not a short-barreled rifle, because it's illegal to have a rifle with a barrel under 16 inches long that has a stock on it. That's a short barrel rifle,
Right.
and you have to get
You
a
need a
special
permit.
federal permit,
Cost you $250.
right, to own that. And then the federal government knows you have it, which is the other issue. So they had the arm brace, and the BATF said, yeah, you can do that.
Mhm.
And so then somebody said, well, what if you put it to your shoulder? And they said, well, whatever, we don't really care, still an arm brace. Then somebody pushed it. That wasn't good enough. We had a really good decision from the BATF,
Right.
and because people are morons, they have to push it. Says, well, what if? And next thing you know, the BATF comes down with a decision that if you shoulder the weapon, it is now
If you shoulder the weapon using the arm brace as a buttstock, then it's now in violation.
in violation, and you're committing a federal crime.
But you said it. It's because people can't just leave things alone. People want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And you know, if they have to make a decision, the decision is it's a short barrel rifle. It's not that you can't do it. It's now that you have to get the permit.
Right. So, yeah, they couldn't leave well enough alone. So anyway, they came down with another decision just recently. A guy sent a letter in March for some gun company or something he's associated with, and they said that as long as the arm brace is attached properly the way it was designed, it is still capable of being an arm brace. In other words, somebody didn't put the arm brace on, then take off all the straps that would make it usable.
Right.
The incidental touching of your shoulder does not make it illegal.
Right. The incidental. But
So,
if they've got a picture of you with it up against your shoulder,
Right. Not incidental.
straps or no straps.
Right.
yeah, that's what I said. I said, so
Right.
basically, you can use these pistols any way you want, but don't take pictures of you shouldering it and post it on Facebook.
Isn't that the problem that we have with all these people? They're always putting it up there. It's just like those guys that were open water skidooing. Snow machines,
Oh, yeah.
right? So what did Fish and Game do? Tracked them down.
Right.
I guess they get so many cotton picking hits on their video that it was
Yeah, people
worth
loved it.
They loved it, yeah.
Right.
So if you're doing something that's not quite legal, the last thing you want to do is take a picture. So
Yes.
It's that simple.
Right.
Yeah, if you're doing something illegal, try not to videotape or take pictures of yourself.
Right. Especially now, you know, we've gained a lot of ground on the firearms. We have constitutional carry. So if your wife's in the car waiting for you to come out of the store and your gun's inside and a police officer sees it and she doesn't have a permit for concealed carry, that we don't have to worry about that anymore. We still have the ability to get a license and be
Wait, do you
vetted.
really trust your wife with a gun in the car
My wife.
when she's mad at you or something?
My wife is has her own guns and she's a very good shot, and
No,
I don't
that's not
let
what I
her
was
get
saying.
mad at me.
Oh.
I'm always
Careful?
whatever she wants is okay with me.
All right.
She's a farm girl.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, so she's been shooting since she was 2,
She knows how to kill pigs with 22s and stuff.
Right.
and cows
And cows.
and intruders.
And intruders, yes.
So I always, if I'm going to be late, I always call first. Make sure she knows it's me.
But, well, actually, you know, the greatest thing that's happened to the Second Amendment in the last 8 years or 9 years is Gorsuch being,
He's going to be a great judge for a lot of things because he believes in the rule of law, and if you don't like the law, change it.
right.
Don't ask me to be an activist judge, and don't ask me to take into consideration anything. If that's not what you want, and you know, we need more judges like that, because we make the laws, not them, meaning the legislators. And when you have places where you can go to, everybody goes and searches for the 9th District Court because it's the most liberal court in the world, and they go there to have everything changed.
Right.
You know, after saying that, it's interesting because on the medical marijuana, a person got a medical marijuana card and then took it all the way up to the 9th Circuit Court because she was now a prohibited person and couldn't buy, own, or possess a firearm. or ammunition. And the Ninth Circuit, the most liberal court in the nation, said, should have thought about that before you get the medical marijuana card. They actually upheld the law, which is amazing.
Well, yeah, it's actually, well, no, really, it's not amazing, because that liberal mindset also is anti-gun. So,
Well, she picked a court, though, because the court's an
Yeah.
activist court.
yeah, well, she should have picked one that wasn't as,
But we've seen the courts legislate from the bench and change statute that was voted on in the House, that passed,
Right.
and was signed by the governor.
And a lot of times, when I was
And
there,
nobody could do anything about it, and I never understood why there wasn't some sort of way to force, the legislature couldn't force the court to change a decision based on them making it contrary to what was in statute.
Because our law wasn't clear enough. We just talked about Senate Bill 9. There's a perfect example. It says that when the Superior Court seals a record, it stays sealed. Nothing in the law says that when the record goes up to the next court, that it stays sealed. So therefore, since there's no law that says it is, they don't have to comply with it. And so that's why Linda Delanis used to tell us all the time, say what you mean. Intent doesn't happen in court. What you intended to say should be on paper, because that's the way they adjudicate anything. It's
yeah, that's,
put on
we
paper.
had a caucus, like, can I talk about stuff in caucus? Is that illegal?
No,
Unless
it's
you're
not
a
illegal,
lobbyist.
unless you're gonna tell us something that we shouldn't
HRA's a
know.
lobby, you know that now, right?
They're lobbyists?
Did you know that?
That's what happens when I leave.
The speaker decided it's a lobby, it's
I'll-
registered as a lobby.
Yeah, on Senate Bill 9, leadership told us that we had to pass it, and don't worry about it, because whatever we say our intention is in the blurb is what the Supreme Court will, and I said to the leadership, I said, no, the court doesn't care what we sign or what we say in a blurb or anything else. All they care about is what was written in that law. Anything else is not they
Well,
may or may not consider it, but they do not
place,
have to.
The place to bring up the intent is in the lower court. In the Superior Court, you can bring it up, if somebody's charged you with the crime based on some law, you can go through and you can gather all the intent, and your argument in that court can be that the interpretation that law enforcement or whoever's charging you, the AG, is using is not what the legislature intended. And you can bring up all the records where people actually speak to it to
Right.
show that what we did was a certain thing. There was a rep I went to Health and Human Services about for a trust fund for a child that was medically injured and couldn't defend itself. And so I was there because I put the bill in. And the thing of it is I put a bill in to do something that the family of that child didn't want done. So my whole testimony was based on, yeah, I agreed with what you want to interpret this law to be, but in all honesty, I lost. So if I lost that interpretation, trying to put it in the exact words, then you can't take that interpretation either, because the legislature was clear that they didn't want it to mean that.
Right.
And that helps. But you have to know enough to go in. And most lawyers won't do the digging because it's so expensive.
Right.
It costs a lot to figure out what the legislature thinks.
Really?
Yeah. Try reading the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can look at, well, if you go back too far, but you can go back and look at the House blurbs and stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
And that usually gives you an idea of where,
Blurbs isn't enough. You
If
need
they're
the
correct.
you need the testimony,
Yeah.
and then you need to take the notes of the session where you actually voted on it. You know, the Senate used to be the best place because the Senate used to have verbatim minutes on everything. They no longer transcribe, because when Jay Flanders was there, I'll say it, he said that he stopped it when he was the Senate Chief of Staff, because he said too many people were coming in and taking those verbatim minutes and using them against Republicans. And I looked at him and said, well, maybe they should. Because if you're out campaigning on one thing, and when you're
And
in
you
here
said-
where you can make the difference and you said something else, somebody should call you on it.
should know it, right.
Yep.
Wow.
So they don't do that anymore?
They don't do that anymore.
That's too bad. Do they have video?
They do not video.
Because the House
They
sessions...
do audio. Oh, they video their sessions, yes.
Yeah, so the House sessions are all videotaped, so I think those are archived.
Those are archived,
See-
and those are good.
So you could hear the floor debate.
Do they record roll call?
Yes, yes.
But not, not voice, no, not voice.
Not
okay.
voice votes, and they don't
Well,
record,
If in the House, you can't see whose voices,
Right.
but in the Senate, you're looking at the entire, so you can tell who voted yes and no.
Right,
Oh,
but it's not on record.
That's a little trick. Don't tell anybody though, okay?
I
But it's
won't,
not on record, you have to be there, though.
right. So they videotape the Senate?
They videotape the Senate.
Okay.
And there are many times
So
when,
you could make the argument that it's really not entirely necessary to have everything recorded because it's still video recorded. so-
I think the minutes of the meeting where all the work is done and people debate
Yeah.
what's what, I think those are the most important minutes of all.
Right.
We actually ask people from time to time, and Republicans and Democrats will get together on a bill of real substance and make sure the record reflects on the floor exactly why they did something, because they don't want any mistakes. It's usually special bills that are extremely important to get right, so.
Hey, so what's your take on the budget? What's going on in the Senate? Because this House basically punted.
Well, the House punted, but in the Senate, being that there are so many senators that came from the House, which I believe is a good thing, what they did was they took two House bills, made one, the House Bill 1 and the House Bill 2 technically, and then they met with the Senate, with the House Finance Committee and worked out what they had done, shared the information. Of course, the Senate always does its own thing.
Yeah.
But, and of course, when the Senate has the budget, we all know that what happens is the Senate has newer, better information on a lot of things as well. So they're working together, they're working hard. The Senate had a great hearing yesterday, did very well with it. They were very pleasant. And you know, what I really liked was there are a lot of people that come to talk who are handicapped, wheelchairs, developmentally disabled, and it's very difficult for them to sit for long periods of time. It's very uncomfortable and very hard. So the chair, Gary Daniels,
He's a good guy.
yeah, what he did was he took all the names of all the people who had some kind of an issue where they either needed to get on a certain van to go home or whatever, and let them go first. And I'll tell you, everybody there greatly appreciated it. They're caretakers, and nobody had any problem with him doing that. It just shows that the Senate cares and didn't want people to be inconvenienced. So it was nice, and the House had its sergeant at arms and all of its people. And I'll tell you, you look at those guys and you think, you know, they've been around a long time. They were the nicest people. They treated everybody nice, and you know, it wasn't yelling at anybody. When people blocked the doorway, they'd go up and say, "Geez, you know, we got a lot of people coming in. Some are handy," and so I was really pleased as a former House member to sit there and watch how they reacted and how they treated people. It was good because it is the people's government.
Theoretically.
It is the people who get involved's government.
Okay.
If you don't bother to vote and you sit home and complain, you get what you asked for.
I had a theory, and I want to bounce it off you, because it really bothered me that what is the new cotton picking caucus?
The Freedom Caucus.
Freedom Caucus. Brand new Freedom Caucus. Basically,
Freedom to vote with the Democrats or the Republicans.
yeah, they're free to do whatever they want as long as it obstructs something. The Freedom Caucus basically blocked the House from voting for the budget. They were the stumbling block.
They joined the Democrats to stop the House from having a budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they joined.
Does that make them rhinos?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So
They're Republicans?
In name only.
But are they Republicans? Is the Freedom Caucus Republican?
Actually, there's a lot of libertarians.
libertarians mostly.
Oh, okay.
So
Technically, they are rhinos.
Right.
Yeah,
They-
yeah,
exactly.
technically they are. I pointed that out to somebody who's calling somebody a rhino. I says, well, you're a libertarian running as a Republican.
That
How,
makes-
how are you calling somebody else a rhino?
Right.
Well, that's different. Okay.
That was that Kukla, Fran, and Ollie voice, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I don't remember that. But anyway, so my concern was typically what happens in the House is if they pass a budget, they have House positions on something. So that if something comes from the Senate, the House can say, well, we've already voted against A, B, C, or D, so we're not going to allow that, and then it's part of the negotiating process.
Right.
What I'm really concerned with is that because the Freedom Caucus voted with the Democrats and didn't allow basically the budget went to the Senate without any vote at all, we'd have no positions at all.
Correct.
And what I fear is going to happen is that the Senate will add a few things into the budget, enough to get enough Democrats actually increase the budget, and then that will be the enough to get it through the House, because the Freedom Caucus is still going to be.
I've been working on a lot of issues over in the Senate because it's easier to work in the Senate than it is the House, and I don't see that happening. The biggest problem you have is the joint rules between the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
It says that neither body can argue for something that wasn't in the bill when it left that body. And since 0 came over to the Senate, the House definitely has no positions. So it's only going to be the generosity of the Senate that sits down and says, okay, we've passed this, what will make you guys pass it? You know what I'm saying? So they may waive their rules and decide to sit with the House so that when you get a chance to vote on it on the floor, it is something that's been hashed back and forth. They're working now together, and they're sort of arguing it just in case they can't get a rule change or suspension. So I don't see it'll be a problem. They're not going to increase the budget beyond where it needs to be. Now, when you look at why they claim that they didn't vote for the budget, is they didn't want anything more than 3%, and they were using the CPI.
Right.
But they weren't using the New England CPI, they were using the national CPI, and there's a huge difference. The New Hampshire CPI
is
Consumer Price Index.
okay.
It's how fast things have gone up between the years. And if you live in Manchester, you'll be the first one to know that rents have gone up 20 to 30% in the last year. So when you start configuring the actual CPI for the state of New Hampshire, it's far greater than what the national is.
Right.
Because on a national basis, it's not the same. So, and the cost of energy over here is the highest. So there again, we're one of the highest everywhere except maybe Hawaii. So that's not figured in. So when they looked at what needed to be done, they didn't look at everything. It was too quick. They came up with it too quick. So I think what you're going to see is the Senate's looking at the same process, only they're taking real numbers, and they're taking the real CPI and looking to see how that works. Now remember, the other bone of contention was that the House wasn't putting in the promised federal dollars, and that's the smartest way to do it, because if you put in that the federal government's going to give us $100 million, so the $100 million that we would put in that hole, we're not going to put in that hole, we'll go spend it someplace else. And then somebody in Congress decides, you know what, we're not giving New Hampshire any money. Well,
Right.
now you're out $100 million. Well, the Freedom Caucus said, well, no, we want you to put the federal money in the budget, but you can't put the federal money in the budget until you actually
You
have
don't
it
know
in
you're
your
gonna
hand.
get it, right,
And that was about a contention that you can't resolve, because
right,
a good fiscal guy saying, I'm not counting any dollar that's not sitting on the table today.
right.
Right.
You know, it's bad enough that we project what our
And local-
taxes are going to be.
Local governments do that all the time. Oh yeah, we're gonna get we're gonna get 10 million from the feds to help with this school program, and all of a sudden the feds say,
Yeah, do you remember the special ed?
Oh, I remember
Yeah,
it
and we
well.
never got more than 20%.
right, I remember it
So,
well,
and-
yeah.
But the programs are
No
in, and
child
once you
and all
have
that
it.
stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So when you look at it, I think the budget will come out, something will come out. The worst thing that can possibly happen is a continuing resolution.
Is it 12 billion? What's the number?
You know, I don't know
Is
what the
it-
final number is, honestly.
Seems like it's up quite a bit since
But you
2010.
have to look at all the things. Now, you know, I advocate for the personal care and the case managers because they're the ones that take care of people that are at home. And one of the insurance companies just did a study that showed that it costs 1/5 of a nursing home to keep somebody in their house.
Much-
1/5.
It's much better to keep them home.
So,
If
we're,
they can.
but you know, when you look at it,
Right.
the personal care people, right now, they're getting $10.25 an hour. I went by McDonald's the other day in my area and it said, start today, no experience necessary, $10, come on in.
Right.
Somebody told me yesterday that Dunkin' Donuts in Manchester is paying 12. Well, for $12, you're pouring coffee. I'm not saying it's not hard because they're busy and you're getting donuts and sandwiches and stuff. The guy making $10.25 is bathing somebody who can't bathe. And because we're short of people, that person may have had accident with bodily functions. You got to clean them up. They can't. I mean, it's not their fault. You know, they're waiting too because they can't. Someone can't get out of bed. And in some cases, and I said this on the floor, for $10.25, I wouldn't do this. But sometimes, in order to help somebody have a bowel movement, they actually have to massage their anus. Okay, and we can't understand why people don't want to do that. The people who do that are dedicated. Super dedicated to taking care of people and helping people. But the least we could do was give them enough money. These guys aren't making enough money to participate in an insurance program.
That isn't really, yeah, that type of job is something that should pay you what would be called some sort of living wage, and not,
I asked the
Poverty.
Senate to raise the rates to those people so they can have at least $14 an hour. I'm not asking for
What
20.
what are the agencies charging? A lot more than $10.25 an hour.
No, at $10.25 an hour, the agencies are going bankrupt. Case managers in 20 years got one raise, a 2.5% raise 8 years ago. Okay, so, but if you look at in the beginning when they were getting $8.35 per day per person that they do case management for, if you throw it into the CPI calculator, today that same rate would be $17 plus, right? Their rate set by legislature is $8.69. But the Department of Health and Human Services said, well, way back when Lynch was the governor, he put an executive order out that said you have to drop it because we were running low on money. So they're still using that, even though it was a 90-day drop. So they're still only paying them $8.35. So what's happening is these people, I know someone in particular who was taking $50,000 to $70,000 out of her own pocket every year because there are a whole lot of people that the state of New Hampshire just ignores. One of the things a lot of us don't realize is that when somebody doesn't qualify, they're left out there, the state just walks away.
Right.
And so the case managers go in there and do everything they possibly can to keep those people alive until something comes up. And when they're done, the state says, don't worry, afterwards, when we finally get them cleared and they're in the system, we'll pay you back. The problem is if you've got 100 cases that you're doing out of 600 that you're not getting paid for, when those 100 finally get in the system and you start getting paid for them, there's another 100 to take their place. So the state of New Hampshire actually uses these companies as a bank, and they never pay them.
Right.
One lady went bankrupt because she owed her business enterprise tax for payroll. But if the state had paid her the difference between what the legislative rate is and what they actually gave her, she would have had almost 2 times the amount of money to pay them, including the fines and fees. And they said, no, we can't do it. I actually got involved and tried to help, talking with senators and compartment heads, and said, she'll swap you. Wipe out the BET, she'll wipe out what you owe her. Oh, no, because we're never going to pay her what we owe her anyways, but we want the BET. Well, how does that make any sense? So, back to my original point, we've asked the Senate to raise the rates for people who go into other people's houses and bathe them and help them out, and at least give them $14 an hour.
right.
And we've asked for the case managers to at least get 11. instead of $8, they can't make it. You know, they send people in, they have insurances and BET.
Case manager, how much, what are the job? I was looking, my son's almost got his 2-year degree in counseling, right? Because I knew they're short, what do you call when somebody's on probation? Probation officers.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Youth probation officers. And I know how my son is with my grandsons. He's stern, but he's really good with them. I said, dude, he would be perfect, right? He's got the counseling degree, and he understands all this stuff. He'd be perfect. So I looked it up. They want like a bachelor's degree and all this other crap.
Oh, that's the problem. They
It's
don't
like,
want to
really?
take.
So a case manager, what kind of degree does a case manager need?
It depends on what they're doing, and some of them, certain things, they have to have a nursing degree, but.
So you have somebody possibly with a nursing degree that can do something for $8 an hour.
The nursing, if you actually send a nurse in with a
That's
case
not
manager,
$8
and the nurses, what they do is they do the health write-up and everything else to show that this person actually complies and can get on the system. Those are $60 an hour.
Right.
If you go to one of the other companies, that's what they do for the elderly, not case managers, it's $94 for, I think it's 15 minutes. So for every 15 minutes, they get $94. But the people that are, like I'm talking about, the case managers, they don't. It's $60, so you go up there, and it takes about an hour and a half to fill out the paperwork to show that this person actually conforms to all the reasons why you would want to be on that program. It's a tough business, but the people that are there, the lady I work for has been doing it for 30 years. And she says, I can't just walk away. And her husband keeps saying, but you can't keep taking that much money out of you. She's not getting any younger either. You can't keep taking that much money out of your pocket and think that it's okay. So basically what she does is she runs this company, pays everybody, and at the end of the year, she's giving all the money that she would have taken as a paycheck plus some of her own.
Right.
It's great. And how could we say we're actually taking care of the elderly and the handicapped? When we talk about the handicapped, the people that can't get out of bed, we get some of these people out of bed, and what they do is they go sit in front of a computer and they work for IBM and all kinds of companies. These guys and girls are wizards. I mean, they can earn a living, but they just need somebody to help them. So I would rather help somebody out of bed, let them be productive, and then help them back to bed at night. I'm okay with paying for that. But for
Are
some
they
reason,
responsible for any of the costs, or is this
If
Health
they-
and Human Services?
if
or-
they can make the money, then they have to pay for a lot of the stuff themselves. The equipment's expensive.
We got like
We
a
don't
minute,
just
so-
give them.
Sure.
So, I just say that we need to be compassionate. We heard stories up there
Yeah,
this
but
this week.
Republicans, Bob.
Republicans are compassionate. You
Republicans
know
are really
why? Because
compassionate.
Republicans
Yeah.
Republicans are the working families, and we always have been. We're the people that actually know what it's like to get up in the morning, sore from the day's work before, but you have a family or you have people counting on you. You get up, you go to work, and you come home the next night, and even though you're sore, you still play with your kids, you still talk to your wife, you do all the nice things, or in some cases you talk to your husband. That's who we are. We're not the people with masks hitting other people's property with baseball bats while our Mercedes is parked down in the garage
3
where it won't
blocks
get
away
hurt.
where it won't
Right.
get scratched, yeah.
Republicans aren't typically
You see a lot
trust
of,
fund
we
babies.
see
That's
a lot
why.
of the Dems are getting really tweaked out about Obama getting $400,000 for speaking engagements and millions of dollars for
That's
book
nothing new,
deals.
though. Yeah, but it's nothing new. Presidents have gotten that kind of money, and
Right, but people are bothered by the fact that Obama portrayed himself as a man of the people and understands the downtrodden, and
Well.
he's not.
He does. There's some people on Wall Street only making $80 million a year.
I know.
Well, that's true.
And
Poor
how do they pay their bills?
Exactly. Hey, Bob, I wish we had 2 hours because I wanted to start talking about some other stuff, but you're all right.
Thank you, sir.
John, right?
Gary
Thank you, sir.
Wright.
He's from Maine.
Oh, we got.
I am. I'm one of the men from
You're a
Maine.
maniac.
Yes.
We'll see you guys next week.